So, Jason says that I like most things, does he? Huh, well that's interesting. Because I don't like this book, because I didn't like this, so I don't like most things. Mostly. Anyway, so, take that. I don't love everything. There's some books out there, believe it or not, Jason, that I don't like, and this is one of them. So, nah. Anyway, hello everyone, Britton here, also known as Some Okie Dude, and today I'm coming back with a new video where I'll be talking about the third book in the Bas-Lag trilogy. I actually was debating on covering this because, despite what I was saying at the beginning of the video, I generally don't like talking about books that I don't care for. I generally try to keep things, I generally like to talk about books that I want to talk about. You know, I want to talk about books that I enjoy and I think are worth discussing. Not to say I am against doing negative reviews. I try to keep things fair and balanced on this channel. I mean, if I like something, I like it, and if I don't, well, too bad. But, yeah, today I'm going to be covering Iron Council from China Mieville, the third book of the Bas-Lag cycle, and as far as we're aware, the last book so far that's been in it. I'm really hoping he does return to Bas-Lag someday. But, yeah, I've covered Perdido Street Station, I've covered the Scar, and after some debate with myself, I decided to cover the Iron Council as well because, well, I can't really find any excuses on why I can't do it. So let's get into it. So after Perdido Street Station and the Scar, man, I was pumped. I'm like, because my plan last year was that I was going to read the entirety of the Bas-Lag trilogy. I'm going to read Perdido Street Station in June, then in July I ended up reading the Scar, and then from about July to December I read Iron Council. So that'll let you know the quality of this book. But I considered my fondness for the Western genre because this book does play a bit with the Western genre. I am a big fan of the Western genre, particularly the movies, and I thought, oh, a weird fantasy in what's shot up quickly to become one of my favorite fantasy worlds, a Western? Oh man, you know, this is gonna be a great deal, you know, right? Sadly, it was not meant to be. China Mieville kind of ended things in Bas-Lag on a dud. It's kind of this weird experimental book. This is clearly the most experimental of the Bas-Lag books, but again, I don't want to get too deeply into it just yet. But, yeah, sadly, this was it was not a fun way to end Bas-Lag. I wanted to like this book more, but, yeah, it just kind of peters out. It starts out pretty good, to be honest with you. I mean, unlike Perdido Street Station and the Scar, which, you know, slowly builds up to the action, this book throws you right into it. You know, like, here's these characters, they're looking for this thing called Iron Council, and they're looking for it in hopes that they can bring it back to New Krobazon. It was fun going back to New Krobazon. I would never want to live there, to keep in mind, but it was nice to go back there, and it was nice to see the old city again, and it felt like seeing an old friend. I had even hoped maybe we would see some of the other characters from some of the other books, like Yagharik maybe, or even Bellis, despite the fact that she annoyed me at times. But aside from that, we didn't get them, but we did get some other characters who did show up in some of the previous books. I am not going to spoil who it is. And then we get this kind of weird Western story about this train society. The first couple, 100 pages are actually pretty good. Fast-paced, high-rollicking, well-written, has a lot of the strange ideas that, you know, makes Mieville tick, what makes him great. But then Mieville decides he's going to be Cormac McCarthy for 100 pages, and it just completely derails the book, and it never quite recovers. To keep in mind, this book is, to keep things really simple, this book almost feels like a tug of war between two plots. One about a revolution that is attempting to happen in New Krobazon, because if you remember in Perdido Street Station, New Krobazon is not a happy place, and the government, I'll just put it this way, the government's pretty whack in New Krobazon, so yeah, there's a revolution going on. And then we get another story about this strange kind of train society, kind of like the movie Snowpiercer. I haven't seen it, but it's kind of like that. There's a society in this train, except they're like a weird, like, communist commune. I call it the cowboy communist commune because, you know, alliteration. I mean, Mieville could have split these into different novels. I think it would have worked a lot better, but, you know, that's just me. And hey, I would have loved to see a book about a train society. I mean, we already got a sea society one in the Scar. I don't think it would hurt to see a train story, like a train society story, though apparently I hear he does that in Railsea, which I haven't read yet. And I hope to read it at some point. But, you know, I wish Iron Council, I guess he played with it in Iron Council first, the idea of a train society. But, like, both plots do come together, but it's not in a way that's very satisfying, in my opinion. I was talking with Jimmy Nuts the other day on my podcast, Britain's Hangout Hour. You can go check that out if you want, though be careful, there is spoilers from stuff like Monster and The First Law. But aside from that, we did talk about Iron Council a little bit, and he mentioned that he heard the main complaint is that there is a lack of a coherent plot. Well, I wouldn't say that. It's more that the book doesn't know what it wants the plot to be. Does it want to be about this train society, or does it want to be about this revolution plot that's going on in New Krobazon? Because it's not really doing a good job at being both, is all I'm saying. I mean, in all honesty, I would have preferred if this were 2 books. I would have loved to see, like, a train society, China Mieville. So, I mean, you know, that's all I'm saying. And now, to keep in mind, Iron Council, aside from maybe The City in the City, is probably China Mieville's most political novel. And it is probably the one where Mieville really lays into his socialist politics the most. Now, Perdido Street Station does have the political angst aspect to it, but it feels like a part of the world. It feels like that's a part of what the book is trying to say, rather than, you know, being a forefront part of the book. This book, it's in the forefront. It's very much, it takes that political angst that was in Perdido Street Station and just runs with it, because, you know, it's just, you know, there you go. Now, it's not bad. Mieville is certainly a smart enough storyteller to have the politics be a part of the world rather than, you know, just him filibustering about how awesome socialism is. I mean, I'm not a socialist myself, but, you know, that's just my opinion. I do find it interesting, considering that he uses the Western genre in this, and it is no accident, because the Western, in its purest form, is basically about exceptionalism and capitalism and the American way and all this fun stuff. And Mieville is really, in this book, anyway, this book is really trying to question that ethos, that capitalist winner-take-all type of mentality, as you do when you're a socialist. Again, Mieville is a smart enough storyteller to where it doesn't really get in the way of what he's trying to do in this book, but, you know, the politics are actually done pretty well in this, so it's not like, you know, I think it's done better in Perdido Street Station, but, you know, that's just my opinion. My favorite of the Bas-Lag books is Perdido Street Station, so definitely biased there. But, you know, like, you know, I've criticized this book a few times. I've criticized this book, and it makes you wonder, well, Britton, were there anything that you did like about this book? Yes, I can't say that Iron Council was a complete disaster. I mean, it's not, it's not The Rise of Skywalker, for instance, which, but it's more like The Last of Us 2, which I discussed with Jason last week, if you want to go check that out. There's some good stuff in this, and there are stuff that showcases why I enjoy Mieville's writing. his descriptive ability, the way that he could bring these strange, bizarre worlds to life, these strange creatures that inhabit the world of Bas-Lag, that you're like, damn, I want to see more of that, you know? But sadly, it doesn't quite have the oomph, the memorability, the emotion that Perdido Street Station and The Scar had that I felt so much when I read both books. You know, it doesn't quite have that charm. It does a little bit, but it's not quite as good, and it's sad, because I really wanted to like this book. I know some people who really enjoy this book, and I know Jimmy is going to be reading this. And in all honesty, Jimmy, if you watch this, good luck, man. I hope you get something more out of this book than I do. It's just, I was just disappointed in this compared to Perdido and The Scar. And I mean, the neat thing about the Bas-Lag books is that you don't have to read all of them. All three of them are different stories, just in the same world. Like Perdido Street Station is a standalone story, The Scar is a standalone story, and Iron Council is a standalone story. So you don't have to read them all. You don't even have to read them all in the same order if you don't want to. Now me, I like to read stuff in chronological order, the publication date, all that stuff. So I read from. But there is a timeline. There is a shift of the timeline. Like this takes place like 20 years after the events of Perdido and The Scar. So I mean, I wouldn't say you should read this first if you would read anything. If you really want to try something first, just try Perdido or The Scar first and see which one you like. So you don't have to read Iron Council if you don't want to. I just read it because I'm a completionist and I really enjoyed the other two books, and I thought, oh, maybe the third book will be really good too. But yeah, I have to say, I think that Iron Council is the most disappointing book of the Bas-Lag trilogy so far. But that is not to say that it is terrible. It's just disappointing. But that said, I do think that, much like the other two books, it is just as unique, just as strange as the other two books, and it certainly is some of the most unique fantasy that I have ever read in the past, ever, aside, and Iron Council does have those moments where you're just blown away by the originality and the strangeness of the world that Mieville creates for Bas-Lag. And it really makes you think about what fantasy is capable of. Because sometimes I feel like fantasy is in sort of a identity crisis. They can't really move on from the influence of Tolkien and try to do their own thing. Don't get me wrong, I like Lord of the Rings, and there are some good, definitely inspired Lord of the Rings books out there. But I'm saying is that, fantasy can really be anything you want it to be. And authors like China Mieville show exactly why that's the case. And that's really all I got to say for right now in terms of the book. So yeah, Jason, I don't love everything. Iron Council is pretty disappointing. Not really much else for me to say. Bas-Lag is definitely worth checking out, though. It's amazing. I would love to see China Mieville return to this world. And I know he has said that... I heard Jimmy say that that Mieville is kind of against it, or that he doesn't really have an interest. I've read somewhere that he isn't against going into Bas-Lag again. He just doesn't have a compelling story to, roll with just yet. But, I have to agree with Jimmy what he said in his Scar review, where he said, this is a world you could do anything in. Like, the world is so complex, so filled with many possibilities of the stories you could do in this world. I'm surprised there's not a lot of fan fiction of this. And again, I have to agree with Jimmy that Bas-Lag is the most underrated fantasy setting of all time. And it's quickly become one of my favorites. I just adore the setting of Bas-Lag. It's so strange, it's so dark, it's so grimy, but also filled with wonder and with life. Okay, now I'm just gushing. Anyway, But yeah, that's basically all I have to say for right now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, you can go check out my Twitter. I'm a bit more unfiltered on there. You can check out my Goodreads or my Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. And check out my Discord if you want to. I love to talk to you guys, so please just give me a look. Talk to me, please. Pretty please. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.